mentioned a more exotic duty station like Sigonella or Japan or even London, he always weaved the conversation back to an aircraft carrier. And one aircraft carrier in particular kept coming up. You know, USS George Washington needs a senior judge advocate, he would say. You would be the perfect match. There are 5,000 sailors on board. You'd be the principal lawyer for them all. Plus, you'd be the senior legal advisor for the captain of the ship. If you do well there, punch your ticket on your sea tour, that billet will line you up for deep selection to commander. Perhaps even captain. After teasing her with exotic jobs at exciting ports of call, the detailer kept pushing her to a 2-year sea billet. Detailers, the officers in charge of assigning officers to their next duty station, were the used car salesmen of the Navy. The detailer's job was to fill jobs. Period. The detailer could simply cut her orders to her next duty station, and that would be that. But jockeying for plum assignments was commonplace in the Navy, and it was better to make the officer receiving the orders believe he or she had volunteered for the billet. In the give and take of the Navy detailer world, the fact was that some commands wanted to handpick certain officers to fill billets, and often the detailer's job was to serve as schmoozer-in-chief, keeping the commands happy, while keeping the officers receiving orders happy, too, if possible. But that wasn't always possible. Many commands called detailers, saying, I want Lieutenant so-and-so, or I want Commander so-and-so to fill this billet. The detailers tried to accommodate those requests. Commanders in Sigonella, Japan, and London had probably called the detailers already and requested some officer other than Caroline as their first choice. And that was okay. It was nothing against her. It was just that most commanders had their favorites. The detailer had tried persuading her to volunteer for the USS George Washington, but she hadn't yet complied with that, because frankly, her first choice was London, where she hoped to become staff judge advocate for Sincus Navure, the acronym for Commander-in-Chief, United States Naval Forces Europe. She had heard through the grapevine that Commander Torp Kinsley was the top choice of Sincus Navure. But she had also heard that Vice Admiral Brewer was pushing the detailer to order Kinsley to Washington, to Code 13, the most selective billet in the JAG Corps, where he would work alongside PJ. Be still, my soul. Deep down, Caroline hoped Kinsley would be unable to say no to the lure of Code 13, and that London would fall into her lap. She had stalled in volunteering for the George Washington for this reason. Still, despite the detailer's used car salesman reputation, she knew the George Washington would be a great career move for her, because sea duty, and especially carrier duty, was an absolute prerequisite for the selection board for captain. Plus, there was a political push to get women into sea billets. Another reason the detailer kept throwing the USS George Washington into the mix. Not only that, but her first cousin, Commander Gunner McCormick, was the senior intelligence officer attached to the George Washington. Gunner had grown up in Tidewater, Virginia. Caroline had grown up in Raleigh, North Carolina. And all the McCormick cousins had spent memorable Christmases and Thanksgivings together. Gunner was scheduled to rotate off the Washington within the next 6 months, so their time together on the carrier, if that happened, would be short. But it would be nice to spend some time with Gunner, if only for a few months. So going to sea at this point in her career wouldn't be the worst thing. Still, she could almost hear the sounds of Britain calling, Scottish bagpipes, the long, deep gongs of Big Ben booming down Whitehall and off the banks of the Thames, the precise clicking and flash of the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. Why not hold out for her first choice? Life on the